As you may know, back in Tanzania, they fondly refer to me as Mama.
When Samia Suluhu Hassan became president in 2021, everyone was very excited. Tanzania's previous president, John Magufuli, left a mixed legacy. Opposition rallies were banned, and critics of the government were found beaten and bleeding after mysterious kidnappings. After a harsh father, it was time for a kind mother, Mama Samia, the Suluhu to the country's problems. Everyone forgot Mama Samia had been part of Magufuli's government. She had been involved in everything that happened before. Even now, many people are reluctant to hold her responsible for the rise in attacks against the government's critics. News organizations have been shut down for the tiniest things. Reforms have ground to a halt. It feels like Tanzania is back on the road to repression. By relying on her male ministers to act for her, Mama Samia has tried to maintain her motherly image despite the brutal actions of her government. But it's time to look behind the maternal mask and ask, is Tanzania becoming a dictatorship? One way to understand Tanzania is through an outsider. Dr. Cassypool, not a doctor in any way, is a big-mouthed Kenyan influencer and gospel singer. Cassypool has always been interested in politics. He even flirted with the idea of running for president, but recently he has focused on his career as a commentator. He supported Kenya's President Ruto during the finance bill protests, despite police shootings. More recently, he argued Kenya's youth were too politically conscious. People wondered if he was hoping for some money from the government. Then, in September, Dr. Cassypool suddenly announced he was going on holiday to Tanzania. Out of the blue, he was absolutely crazy about Mama Samia. She was amazing.
The best!
He recorded a new song about her achievements. He screamed about the lack of traffic congestion. He showcased the new port in Dar es Salaam. Dr. Cassypool had finally found his political patron. And although his content was government propaganda, there was some truth to his observations. Tanzania's economy has boomed under Mama Samia. In 2021, GDP was roughly 70 billion. 3 years later, it had risen to 85 billion. One reason for growth has been a focus on massive projects. The port in Dar es Salaam is being developed by a Dubai-based company, which will run the port for the next 30 years and take its profits. When opposition activists tried to organize a protest over the plans, the government denied them permission. But in Tanzania's northern region, Mama Samia has a plan with a much worse trade-off. The government is locked in a struggle with Maasai communities in the north of Tanzania. The plan is to dramatically expand land under conservation. The drive is financial. Over 700,000 tourists visit the region each year. Investors from China and United Arab Emirates have spent millions building private lodges, some of them for wealthy foreigners interested in hunting. Unfortunately, people happen to live on a lot of this land and don't want to leave it. The Maasai herd cattle on the edge of conservation areas. Mama Samia's solution has been to construct new villages for the inconvenient Maasai and encourage voluntary resettlement. In reality, a brutal campaign of intimidation has left many of these communities living in fear but determined to stay put. Government rangers beat locals who cannot produce an ID pass. Hospitals and schools have been shut down. Over 100,000 Maasai were removed from the electoral register, denying them the right to vote. The only way out was for communities to move hundreds of kilometers to new custom-built towns with land that's often unsuitable for cattle herding. In August, thousands of protesters blocked major roads in the region, carrying leaves and branches as a sign of peace. Ardhi yetu, urithi wetu, our land, our heritage, was written on their signs. The strangest part of the August protests was how they were resolved. A court ruled that the government must temporarily halt its plans, but not because of the protesters. Locals believe the government paid a lawyer to file an injunction against itself. At first, that might seem like a strange thing to do, but this allowed Mama Samia to pause the project in the face of international criticism. 2 months later, things began to move forward again. The government approached the Maasai protest by controlling the narrative. The protesters argued they were being peaceful and defending their heritage. In response, the vice president called for peace for development at the memorial service. The same day, a government newspaper argued the Ngorongoro relocation was exactly what Julius Nyerere would have wanted. It was in line with the nation's heritage. As on so many controversial issues, Mama Samia was silent as the wheels of her government began to turn. If there is one mantra that defines Mama Samia's government, it is control everything. This applies not just to the narrative around controversial issues, but even opposition to them. At Ngorongoro, her government likely paid a lawyer to file an injunction against itself. It's this desire to control opposition which has led to a return to political violence. Since coming to power, Mama Samia has been in negotiations with the largest opposition party, Chadema, about changing laws made under Magufuli. She casts herself as the great unifier, a person who brings all parties together, but only on her terms. In 2023, she unbanned political rallies at a press conference at State House. Since then, things have started to spiral out of control. Chadema has begun a grassroots campaign for a new constitution. Negotiations over reform have broken down. In response, Mama Samia has brought back the bad boys from Magufuli's cabinet, and opposition activists have started going missing. In September, Ali Kibao, a senior member of Chadema, was dragged off a bus, beaten, and had acid poured on his face. His lifeless body was found the next day. Many other Chadema members have been abducted, some have still not been found. In response to the violence, the opposition organised a peace rally, which Mama Samia banned, ironically, as a threat to law and order. Only she was allowed to condemn the murder of Kibao. The level of control she demands over daily life in Tanzania has escalated in the run-up to elections. An artist who burned a picture of her was jailed for 2 years. A news agency who featured a simple cartoon showing her reacting with sadness to news of political violence had their offices shut down. Mama Samia's idea of unity is not one where diversity and disagreement flourish. It's a world where she controls both sides of the argument, where real opposition does not exist. Stories of abductions and killings whilst the government tries to push forward unpopular decisions, these patterns are familiar to East Africans. They match the violence and intimidation carried out under William Ruto in Kenya, deaths and disappearances which no one has been held accountable for.
That boy is alive, right?
It's no coincidence Ruto's loudmouthed praise singer, Dr. Cassypool, has found a friend in Mama Samia. Tanzania's president likes to surround herself with talkative men who do her dirty work, then she dons the guise of a national mother. But the ruthless way she polices this image suggests it is more fragile than you might think. It seems like the illusion of Mama Samia can only be maintained by descent into dictatorship. So what do you think? Do Samia Suluhu Hassan's economic achievements outweigh the dark side of her government, or is she following a path leading to dictatorship? Why not comment below? For more videos like this, like and subscribe to the Africa Review.